Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Her Blueprints podcast, where we share stories from women engineering tomorrow. And I have another guest with me here today, and her name is Jackie. And I'm looking forward to what we are going to talk about and share with you, and hopefully learn from each other and get some insights. Jackie, hi. Hi. Thank you so much for honoring the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Yeah, how are you feeling today?
Good, good. It's a beautiful day.
It is. Yeah, enjoying the pineapple and me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the recommendation. I love it. I like it because it doesn't have so much sugar. It's like just pineapple mint. That's it. And
Yes, really good. I love it.
yeah, awesome. We can start with your background. Tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, how you would describe yourself to someone who is meeting you for the first time.
Hmm. Okay. I'm Jackline Nakitto. I prefer to call myself a multidisciplinary engineering technologist. So this is basically for building engineering. So my background, my educational background is in architecture, civil engineering, and building construction. And I also have a ton of experience in building services. That's mechanical, electrical, and public health. I've had the privilege, it's such a privilege to have worked in a multidisciplinary engineering firm for over a decade. So I've had the opportunity to work with the most brilliant minds. And I've taken all of that experience and I channel it into content creation. I have a page on Instagram. It's called Build It JK. So you can follow. Yeah. So I share construction content and I bring that wealth of experience and I break down all the technicals down to the level that people where you and me could understand if you have a building project, what are the steps you go through, what are the little bits, the little gaps that you need to pick in on that could become a huge problem after. So that's what I do also. I'm a mom. I have two wonderful boys, 11 and 8, football junkies. So I'm a soccer mom through and through. And so, yeah, so I've been in engineering for a decade and I love it. I love it.
Um, you said you mentioned that you had a background in architecture and then you kind of transitioned. What sparked that transition? Why did you choose to transition?
I think for me as a person, I don't believe that a person should be like singular or be good at one thing. So I'm multifaceted. I do so many things from, your technical calculations. I love cooking. So I sort of like gained an interest because as projects move along, you see you move from architecture, then you go into civil and structural design, then you go into mechanical and electrical design, then you go to site. So that entire chain. So I always was keen on, learning. And I was always something would always get, spark an interest for me, especially if it had a creative element to it. So architecture in itself is very creative. Like you have to really be creative to do that. So, and then you move into civil engineering, it also has its own creativity, construction, and then you have mechanical, which is actually very interesting.
I hope people don't take this as a dig, but as a civil engineer in me, it's sometimes really like, what are architects thinking? Like, sometimes you will look at a design and it's kind of like contorted in all sorts of ways. And when you're a civil engineer and you know the math that goes into it, and you have to, factor in those eccentricities every time, you're having a change and trying to, and you're like, do these people know how much math I have to do to make this thing like structurally sound? And I'm like, okay, just be their act. And
And now look at it where you have a multidisciplinary office where you have the architects, the engineers and the building services engineers in one space. It's very interesting. It's very interesting, the conversations. You're like, because now I'm more on the side of engineering more than architecture. So it's always like, why are you asking me that? Like, do you know what I have to do? So it's absolutely valid. And most of the times they are more keen on, aesthetic.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes I always ask them, but you need this to work. So
You need people in it.
yeah, I need people in it. Like, I always like, you need people to go to use the toilet, right? So we have to have the tank there. Yeah, but I don't want to see it and all of that. So yeah, I get. Yeah, it's interesting working with them actually and seeing their mind.
Appreciating what they do and what we do as well. Yeah, managing that.
And how that comes together. It's never been perfect. I don't think it will be perfect, but we get it. We try to make it work.
Yeah. Talk to me a bit about the schools that you went to and what your experiences early on were. Did you always know that this is something you wanted to do? Or is that something that came later?
Well, primary school, that was at Lohana Academy. Then I moved to Makerere College School for my O level. Did a bit of HSC at Makerere College School as well, but I later shifted to Caltech Academy, Makerere, and then moved on to do a diploma in architecture. And that's at UTC Busheni, and did a higher diploma in civil engineering and building construction still at UTC Busheni. UTC is Uganda Technical College. So I'm a very technically, vocationally trained, hands-on
Person?
yes person. So yes, so I actually always wanted to be a doctor. Okay, yeah, interesting. Absolutely. Like I always grew up thinking I was going to be a doctor. So I always loved science. I loved biology, but I wasn't good at chemistry though. So I think when it came to the A levels, my chemistry just wasn't cutting it compared to the biology. So I figured it wasn't a channel that I could pursue. So which is why I was like, you know what, I've always loved design. I love fashion as well. Anything design, anything creative. So I was like, let me try architecture. So that's why I moved into architecture. But I'm still a junkie for medical dramas. Like I could sit through and just be there and like get all the jargon and wonder. Like I really find it interesting still. So yeah, and then I started growing in architecture, and then moved on. I think I always promised myself that I won't be just one thing. I will explore as much as I can, do as much can, as long as it allows. I mean, what do I have to lose? So yeah.
Where do you think that desire for that multifaceted personality comes from? Just wanting to do everything that you can do and yeah.
Yeah. So my mom has done every job under the sun. Everything. I think for her motto is, I'm not failing. Like failing is not an option. If A doesn't work, move to B. If B doesn't work, move to C. If C is paying you better, then stay. If you're getting better experience, so move. So my mom, I've watched her come from having a hardware in Hasero, jumping on buses to go to Nairobi to, get things in back in the day when Blue Band was coming from Nairobi. I mean, she would be on those buses. She had a shop, she had a restaurant, she had, she was into farming. She's gone like, she'll literally travel and go, let's say, to the east in a land where she doesn't know anybody and set up an onion farm. So that's my mom. She's not stuck to one thing. So, and it's something that I have later on realized that I also do. So I think that comes from her. We are not giving up. We are moving. We are learning. And I think seeing that growing up has really affected or like given me that sort of multifacetedness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. Being around I think what should I call it? like maybe a community or being surrounded by people who do all these different things, and then you being inspired to just go out there, yeah, and do it. And I absolutely love your confidence and your energy. Yeah, and you mentioned that you also do content creation. I was like, so happy to see like someone as a subject serious in the space. And there's not much of that. Many will not see much of that. And I did it. So,
Well, I'd say maybe our temperaments as engineers as well, we are more reserved, more, I mean, and also the engineering of it, most of the times it's a lot of work all the time. It's basically, I like to call engineering, we solve people's problem. You wake up in the morning and every day they put a complex problem at your table. So most people don't sort of get maybe the time to sort of let that creativity out there, and also having to, you know, explain that and maybe be out there as well, because most engineers are more introverted. So I think that's also put a damper on things in terms of having content creation in engineering. Yeah.
that's an interesting argument. I'm a proponent for, I think people make time for the things that they care about. And perhaps some people are not as interested. I was doing a fellowship recently, and like one of the things that I really took away was that when you can't forefront, or if you can't communicate, if you can't put out there what you're doing, and I think a lot of that now is in terms of social media, being expressive that way, like then people are not going to know about what you're doing if you're not explaining it in terms of they can understand. They're going to give you their money now. They have no idea what you're doing. Yeah. So why did you choose to do it? Irrespective of the odds, why did you go ahead and do it?
Yeah. So COVID 2020, everyone is stuck at home on TV, and all you have are the shows that are on TV. So there's this show, and I always felt like it was a sort of a construction, not a, basically construction. It was sort of, done like that, but it was so glossed over. I would literally sit down and get angry. They'll just show the finished works, how it looks like. But I'll be like, I want to know how it's done. If I'm building my house, I would love to know why you're doing A, B, C, D. What is more expensive? What are the, how can I cut costs? I felt like those are the things that, the normal person would want, to know, other than seeing glossed over images from Dubai or showing me like buildings which are done. And there's so much that goes into them, but it was so sort of like watered down or narrowed down to that specific. And I felt like, you know what? I'm going to do this. What I would love to know. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it out there. So that's how I started off. And, you know, got my phone, put it there, started out. I did what I was doing. I did at all. But over time, I've done it for 2 years now. The audience, the followers have directed me in a path in what they want to know, what they want to understand. And over time, I've gotten better and better and better. And I know I have a long journey, so I'm still getting there. Yeah.
What is one of the commonest questions that you received about construction and technology that you would want to share and be like, yeah, I get this a lot. Let me explain it.
Okay. So I think for me, it's always how much does it cost me to build a 3-bedroom house or this or that? And does it cost some also? Well, and the funny thing is, they don't want to listen to the actual cost. Because people, when it comes to money and construction, I'll say this without batting an eye, construction is not cheap. it isn't at all. So most people don't want to actually know the actual cost of their project. They want, the little bits and pieces. And I think that's how the industry is working right now, is you get a builder and they'll give you half the cost, give it to you, you get in, and then the moment they see that you're in, then they start giving you the actual cost. By the time you're done, you have actually paid for it all. So I think it in receiving, if they could be open to receiving that actually this is how much it costs, doing their build of quantities or maybe doing their material schedules and actually understanding them and accepting them because, they're coming from professionals, they're coming from quantity surveyors who've done, all the math and the numbers. So I think that's the number one question that I always receive. And I always say there's no one way to it. Everyone's house is different. Everyone's project is different. The process are different. So it could be advisable. The best way to answer that question is get your dream down on paper, get your plans done, and then get them costed. And that's the best way for you to know how much it will actually cost.
Yeah. Could you explain a bit what BOQ and material schedule means?
Okay. So a bill of quantities is a more comprehensive, more detailed schedule of costs and rates and descriptions, an in-depth description of let's say the materials that you're going to use. So it more or less encompasses everything that you will need. And a BOQ usually is in a more technical language. It's not broken down to a language that you might easily understand, but it usually is done and it will give you a comprehensive and complete cost of a project. Whereas the material schedule is more of an extraction from the BOQ, where we extract things, cement, sand, labor, bricks, what you will use, maybe iron sheets, how many there are. So it's in a more comprehensive, no, it's in a more simpler form in terms of materials you need to buy in order to achieve or build your project. So that's the difference between these.
Yeah. I'm sure there's someone out there thinking, but on average, how much does it cost to build our the new house?
I also had
I
Well,
Golden Market.
I also had the same question. They gave me the number and I was like, nah. But I was doing my own house. It is correct and it is true. So on average, we would say that a 3-bedroom house, approximately 150 square meters. I would say this is a modest house. 150 by 100. Standard finishes. Again, standard finishes. No fancy things. No fancy things. You end up at about 180.
Million Ugandan shillings.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite a bit of money for an average Ugandan Anna.
When it's finished and everything's in and you can hold it out.
Are there can you think of some particular projects that you worked on and been excited about that you would like to talk about?
There've been quite a number of projects that I've worked on. I think one of the most exciting projects was an office block in Kampala. But this office block was geared towards getting green certified, like in terms of sustainability, getting if people are conversant with Edge, or maybe they are conversant with LEED, get maybe LEED certified, Edge certified. And so we had to design this in a way that we were supposed to achieve certain parameters and figures in terms of energy usage for the building. So we had to employ lots of analysis, design, not just your design, but does your design serve water? Does your design serve electricity? What are the savings in terms of, let's say, energy usage overall? So this project sort of threw us in a space where we had to, explore things like grey water reusage, where you get water from the building, take it through a wastewater treatment plant, recycle it, and then put it back into the toilets, into the same system. And then also in terms of ventilation. So because you want to lower your cooling load in terms of electrical usage. So getting to construct a building which is naturally ventilated and it's actually sustainable and it actually works. I putting in things like uh thermomass, your windows, what are the sizes, how are they, cross ventilation, materials that we were using. So lots of things, solar PV systems, smart metering. So it was it was very interesting and actually get it to the finish line. Well, I say it was a marathon, but it was like a roller coaster. Like it was really exciting and at the same time challenging. Like where you go back home and be like, that will that work. Yes, the design works. Yes, the math works. But never seen it before. Like, betting on yourself and saying that, okay, this is what we are doing. This is what we are going for. And yeah, I was excited when it actually worked. Really, really excited. I was like, I've made it in life. So yeah, it was a very interesting project. I'm happy to be part of that team. Yeah.
And what were some of the challenges when you were doing that project?
Hmm. Well, you'd enter a room of 20 men and go through all these discussions and actually have to, state your case or find out solutions. And I think at first it was intimidating, but by the time I did this project, I had sort of gotten my way around it. And I always say that for us women in these spaces, over time, what I've understood is that for you to thrive and to actually have a footing in these spaces, you have to be technically sound 110%. At the 10%, or even 120%. Like your technical has to be on point because most of the time that's what they'll try to sort of like, yeah, I and so like that like they don't know what they're doing. So the moment they understand that you're technically sound, then you will absolutely get the respect that you deserve and you'll be like one of the boys.
But I know every one of them were. I had to be a woman in my home feminine in a year. And I want to do my job well and get it done well.
So that was one of the challenges. And the other one was, trying to, if you're having multidisciplinary design is uh, having it coordinated. Yes, coordinating this design to make sure that everything is working the way it should. The clashes are being handled because we had a lot of issues with clashes. This one is clashing with this. The water fountain is clashing with the electrical roots and all of those things. So there was a lot going in that. And, so many things to learn. But I realized that coordination is actually important and it's not something that we actually put a keen interest on in Uganda, maybe because we haven't yet advanced to using a more sophisticated BIM software, which, will do that flash detection and all of that. But I know we are heading there.
You mentioned BIM, and I think it's building information modeling. Could you please expound more on that? Like go into a little bit of detail into what that means, what it does, the potential that it has.
Ah, well, BIM. Well, because BIM is something which is not so advanced in the industry. So I've had the opportunity to interface with BIM on a project that we are working on. And it's such a steep learning curve for us, such a steep learning curve. But the outcomes are so incredible, they'll blow your mind. So what BIM is basically where we have all disciplines working on one model. So say you're building your home, not a home, I'll give an example of an office floor. You'll have the architects, the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, public health engineer, electrical instrumentation, telecoms engineer, all of them working on a single model. So it's what you call a central model. So this central model, the architects produce it, and then the structural engineers start putting in their beams, their foundations, their steel structure systems, the roof, the frames, the trusses, and all of that into that model. Because before everyone was doing their own model. And when they join those two together, you start seeing the clashes. Let's say this window is in the bracing for the structural system or the foundations. Then the electrical guys also come in and they'll have their trenches coming in. So how am I, coming into the building? Where are my cable trays? Can your beams support them? And then the public health engineers also come in. My pipes, I am putting them in this wall, but the wall is too small. It can't do that. So we need to shift that. So you're able to see that in real time before you actually go to site and people start pulling their hair out. So you see that before, and it's, you go through the clash detections, you resolve the clashes until you actually produce a building, but in 3D form before you actually go to site. You go through this back and forth before. So when you go to site, it's just seamless execution of everything.
That is so good what they've been able to do with it. When you were explaining it, I was kind of thinking about like a one-stop place where everyone is actively working to kind of put things together. Yeah, I can say how that would be very, very useful in terms of because I don't have much site engineering experience, but I did it for a very short time. And I can relate with trying to pull your hair out when you realize that, this here is not going to work. It's not going to be okay. Yeah. Um, you talked a bit about entering a room and it's full of men. Yeah. And I wanted us to dissect a bit what your experience has been like as a woman in engineering and how you're managing and how you're navigating through all those challenges.
So I would break it down within 5-year periods, 5 years span. So the first 5 years, I would say my own experience because you come from school, you've done all this hard maths, you've done all this, problems, you've interfaced and you feel like you're a pro, you're a champ. And then you get in
Like, I'm sorry, Lord.
you come out, you're the best of the best. I mean, you are just headhunted from school. You get into the working field. And I can tell you that 90% of what you studied, chances are you won't necessarily use it because it's already been embedded in software. So all those calcs and all those hard numbers you are cutting and all of that. So now when it comes down to this, because most of the times if you have a mentor, they'll tell you put that aside. You're just going to pick out concepts from what you've studied and now let's get to work. You start on a clean slate. So the first 5 years for me, in my own experience, were the toughest. And I remember I got into a bit of trouble because I was telling the contractor outside, I was telling him, no, you're supposed to do this and this is supposed to be like this and this. And I mean, this man was like, I am not taking instructions from a 21-year-old. It is not happening. So there was like, so much happened. And I mean, I was pulled back from site because when you go to site and you're interfacing with contractors and these men, you have to have wisdom. So and wisdom sometimes comes with age and it comes with experience. So you don't go just because you know something is right, but how do you deliver it? How are you talking to them? How do you see a complication? How do you get people to resolve issues? So it's not just about the design that you do, but it's about resolving. It's about leadership. It's about people. It's about, you have to study temperaments and do all that. So the first 5 years for me, after that incident, literally I call it where my wings were chopped off. After my wings were chopped off, I became humble. I became humble right off the bat And in that period, I remember we used to go to site and I would hide behind the engineer. Oh, please don't see me. Not here. I mean, in case of any questions, but I used that time to see, to observe, and to learn. So those were the first 5 years. They were really hard. Then the next 5 years is where you're now getting into, your groove and figuring out what you want. And this is where you get into before you go to, it's like the middle management or middle engineer, middle brown. And you start going to site and meeting people on site. But one thing that I'd love to tell people or young people going into engineering is be humble. Those people that are on site know a lot more than you do just because they don't have all of this and the degree. That's not what. They actually know a lot more than you do. And in those 5 years, you have to learn from them. Learn, see what they're doing. How are they doing? How are they laying a foundation? Because you, as you chances are, you've never literally put up a column because you don't know how to tie those bars and what goes into it. So learn from them. And those next 5 years is to learn from the people you meet along the way. And then the next 5 years is okay. You have had 10 years of being humble, learning, and learning from the other people. So the next 5 years is now where you can get into a room and you're not intimidated. In fact, you don't even notice that you're the only woman there at that point in time because you've already learned from these people. You have put in the time and it will come to you because by the time you're confident in your technical ability and when a question comes at you, you can answer it. And if you don't know the question, you say, I'll get back to you on that. And that's okay. That you can't know everything. Because here, I always say in engineering, we learn to learn. We go to school to learn how to learn. So we go to school, all those complex numbers that they give us that you'll never use. It's because they want to teach you that somebody is going to say, okay, someone has worked on a project for 2 years and they've resigned and you're supposed to take on this project. You do not know anything about it, but you're supposed to get up to speed in the first month. You have literally weeks to get up to speed, figure it out, and hit the ground running. That's why we do all that, complicated stuff and whatnot. It's just to train our minds to do that. They'll give you a project, you never use the software, you don't know what it's about, but you have to learn it and deliver. There's no one who's going to train you. So, that's how I would put it in breaking it down in that way. Yeah.
That is very enlightening because I personally haven't been in that field for so long. So, and when you come out of school, you're like, oh, 4 years or 5 years or however years you spent in your undergrad, and you feel like it's a long time and you're putting books behind you. You still have like 5 more years of learning. Surprise, surprise. Spoiler. Spoiler. Yeah, and even beyond that, you're still learning and learning and learning. So, yeah, it's interesting. And you said, they're literally teaching us to learn how to learn. Yes, how to learn. That's very powerful as well. Yeah, and how have you navigated, like challenges that have been thrown your way? Yeah, because I think I would say you're a pretty confident person. And I know you said at a certain point it kind of someone humbled you and you kind of started learning again. But what tips would you give us to be able to build that confidence, not just in your technical ability, but also in how you speak, how you present yourself? And I know I already said this. I absolutely love your energy. Thank you. And also just staying true to yourself and being feminine in your energy, but still being assertive and getting things done and getting deliverables done. Yeah.
Okay. How have I navigated these challenges? I'll say that the challenges don't stop. I'm still learning as well. But I always ask myself the question, what do I have to lose? what do I have to lose? I mean, I'll give you an example. At a certain point in time, I was contacted to be part of a team pitching for a job in the oil and gas sector. I had no idea what it was about, what was required. But just like I said, they teach us to learn how to learn. So I said, what do I have to lose? I mean, I'll be kicked out of the meeting. Maybe that's the worst that could happen. But you have to be brave, first of all. So I think bravery, number one. You don't really have so much. So get out there, do it. And the best thing that could come from it is to learn, get a lesson. I always say that's probably one of the best students of failure.
Interesting.
When I look back, I have failed at so many things, so many things, but I always come back better. And now at this point in time, I embrace failure. In fact, when I'm going into a situation, I'm like, yeah, I'll fail like 2 times, but I keep going. I'll get down, going, yeah. And always learning from other people. I personally have a mentor. She's a senior engineer. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant woman. Like, she's so wild. Like, she's called Sylvia. And that has taken me, what would have taken me 5 years has taken me like 2. So the confidence that you see, the being able to, speak up my own mind and also get into these spaces, it's because I honestly have someone behind me in the same space, in the same field. And whenever I feel like I don't know how to navigate something, I talk to her. Even before this podcast, I went and actually sat down with her and told her, okay, what, in my Jacqueline ways, I will say this and I'll say that. What do you think? She's like, I don't think that's a good angle to go, or that's how you should say it. So get a mentor. Get a mentor now, like not later, but now. And actually foster a relationship with your mentor. Be sure to actually be intentional with meeting up with your mentor and talk to them about, because they'll serve you. Yeah, yeah, they've already been through it, they've experienced it. So get a mentor. Absolutely. Be brave. Be a student of failure. And, learn to learn. And I can tell you, every day you'll be solving complex problems for somebody out there. So,
Yeah, that has reminded me. I had a mentor, still is my mentor actually. He's called Rob, and one of the things he did for me was really get me to not to believe, because like sometimes you're intelligent, but you're not convinced, or you don't know how to assert yourself and say I'm good at this. I know I'm good at this. There's things that I don't know, but I'm open to learning, and just kind of taking up room in a space. Like being given space is different from taking up the space. Like you might be in the room, but are you going to be confident enough to speak up and do that? And one of the things he did for me, I remember him telling me, is like, you know that typically when they put out an application, women are only going to apply when they meet 100% of like the requirements, and men 70, 75, he'll put in the application and show up to the interview like he owns the space. And it's like, when you see an application and you meet 75, apply. Go, tell them, you convince them of your capabilities, tell them you're willing to learn, because that is the attitude that people want to work with people who want to learn anyway. Yeah, so I really agree with you, especially also on getting a mentor now rather than later. Yeah, and I'm hoping that this podcast does a bit of that, show women that there are so many women doing so many amazing things. Reach out to one of them and be like, hey, how are you doing? You're better. Yeah, so that's so powerful. What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about engineering as a career, and they're a young woman? Maybe they feel a bit scared. They don't know if they'll be able to handle it, or they're just starting out.
Okay. So, ah, girls. Anyway, it's what I can tell you is you have so much space here. There is a lot of space for you, and it's such an incredible field. You get to solve problems every day. You get to learn every day. You're a student for life, and it's yours for the taking. So bet on yourself, and join this field. There's so much for you to do, and I mean, we could all use a lady's touch, and we are waiting for you. And it's your unique um, perspective that really makes the biggest difference. So to the girls out there, tell them to be brave. Be brave. Come in here. You can do it. And I mean, you don't have to feel like, because I know sometimes when they're coming from school, they feel like, oh, maybe I didn't do so well in that subject or in that course unit. No, no. Because where you're coming to, sometimes the reason those course units are a bit tough is because out here it will teach you resilience. So, and where you're coming to, failure is a part of the game. Because without failure, we wouldn't be making innovations every day. So it's okay. Just keep pushing, keep driving, get in here, and we'll be amazed. There's so much space and so much to do. Yeah.
Mhm. I usually finish up with 5 fun questions. Quick ones. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Love yourself.
Mm, ye- This is the second time someone has actually said. What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
After a long day, I love to cook. Yeah.
What's your favorite meal?
Lasagna.
Oh, interesting. I don't know how to make lasagna. Actually.
I did, and it's perfect.
What's one thing you wish you had more time to do outside of work?
Travel.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
Oh my goodness. All over the world. I'd like to go to Seychelles, Mauritius, of course, Greece. We all have Greece on our
Actually, have gooses. Um, what's your go-to snack while you're working?
while I'm working. Rolex.
Uh, Classic color. And then finally, um, what's a common engineering stereotype that you would love to debunk, especially about women in engineering?
Mm. That you have to be you have to take on a macho, manly like character or something like that. That your femininity is not welcome into the space. Absolutely wrong. Couldn't be any farther from the truth. Because you'll find a ladies having to put on this persona, like, beat up. Like, I mean, and it affects our choices in terms of the hair we do. You find we haven't done our hair or the nails, or and it affects us because that's not our space, or that we don't function well in such a space. So, I mean, bring your feminine self to this place, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at how much you can do, and you don't have to be like a macho man to thrive. No, put on your lipstick, get in a meeting. I mean,
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I absolutely enjoyed this, and I hope someone out there learns, and I hope someone reaches out about mentorship because I'm very passionate about it as well. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bye.